my family's engagement in the fight for civil rights and the NAACP. As far as I can judge accurately, this began in the early 30s, 1930s, because we lived in Brownsville, Tennessee, which was located in one of the 3 counties in the entire state in which black citizens were not permitted to vote. And they had not voted since Reconstruction, when they did vote, until post-Reconstruction, when it again became impossible for them to vote. So they began to campaign to secure the right to vote. And of course that included, first of all, going to the courthouse, which is where registration occurred, to register. And despite the number of times they went, each time they were refused the right because of their color. Therefore, they decided it was time to take another step forward and organize as many citizens as possible to participate in this demand for the right to vote. And as they undertook to do that, the thought occurred to them that we should form a chapter of the NAACP, which would be the structure for the people we are enlisting to participate. Approximately a year after they started this particular effort, they were able to get enough people to agree to become a member of the NAACP, which was essential. And of course, the minimum number at that time, I believe they secured 50 members, potential members, whose dues were forwarded, and the NAACP secured its charter as the Haywood County branch NAACP. And it was under this banner that they continued their work to enlist more people and to sign petitions and submit them to continue to go to the courthouse to vote. And as a result, the work spread, and they eventually it became a matter of concern for the leadership of the country, of the community, in the sense the mayor and the city commissioner and the sheriff and all those people who were the power at the top of the power structure of this particular county. And they concluded that something had to be done about this. So as a result of that, an effort was made to intimidate the black people, to threaten them with economic reprisals and the loss of employment and so forth. But that did not work, so the next step was to do it, was to actually remove the credit privileges. And this was important to tenant farmers and who had to live on credit during the winter months before the spring harvest, and the grocers would traditionally permit credit to be given. In any event, this was a systematic campaign by the white power structure to eliminate this particular effort. And as a result, people did lose their jobs, farmers did lose their credit. My mother was dismissed from her teaching position. My father had formerly been a teacher, but he had inherited an undertaking establishment when a relative died. So he had stopped teaching in order to run the business. But the NAACP continued to grow in size, and the opposition became more violent. Actually, it became violent. They would arrest people on a pretext of their having done something in the Hatton, and my father was arrested on a number of occasions. And one night he was brought home. I was home alone. I guess I was about 9 at that point, and my mother was at a meeting, and they brought my father home into the living room because the front door was not locked. And I was there. People didn't lock their doors that much, except late at night. And they threw my father on the couch, and he was bloody about the head. So they said to him, to me, "You better take care of your pa. He's had an accident." So, and I later found that the accident was that he had been beaten about the head with brass knuckles, which caused the bloodiness. And they did not arrest him that time. They simply just did that and brought him home. It was the intensity of these incidents and the threats increased. And it was, at this point, the time of year was winter. We were approaching between Thanksgiving and Christmas, as I recall. And of course, there was much fear among members of the committee, of the community. And many of the NAACP members, of course, were frightened. And some of them withdrew, but the majority of them continued to make the protest and saying that they had a right to vote, and why should they be denied this right? And this was a situation which existed. I would say it continued in this fashion for another several weeks. And eventually there was growing concern because the members of the NAACP then organized a march up to the courthouse as a group instead of going to get to register individually as they had been doing. And from that, there were many rumors which began after the group had gone to the courthouse and been rejected. So that my father's family was very concerned. He had 4 brothers. His mother still lived, and they lived some distance from the town. But my grandmother sent for him one day during this period to say that you've got to leave town. He had refused to leave, as many of them had done. And he said, no, he couldn't do that. And my grandmother said that, well, you've got to leave because you have a family. You have 2 daughters in college and one in school, in elementary school here, and you need to be concerned about them. And if you don't leave, I am told by a reliable source that you will be killed, and that there's a plan to do this on Christmas Eve, to burn your home and kill you in the process. And of course, when my grandmother told him this, he said, well, that's just another rumor. And she said, no, this was given to me by a most reliable source. And he came to me because there was nothing he could do to stop it. And he inquired who was this source. So she had to tell him who had given her this information so that he would accept it as the truth. And she told him that it was the county coroner who was a doctor, and the county coroner, of course, happened to be her half-brother. He was white, of course, and but they had the same father and different mothers, and he had attended her. He had served as a doctor in the meantime all these years, and it was a known fact. This wasn't a secret. You might understand in the South in those days, the race relations and the mixing were an open secret, but it didn't matter, you were black and the other one was white. So when he heard that, he knew that Dr. Sabir was telling the truth. This is the doctor. So he decided that he would go to Kansas City because my mother had gone, as a brother of hers lived there, who had suffered critical injuries in an accident. And she had just happened, coincidentally, gone to help the wife with his care. And as a result, he decided that he would leave for Kansas City. And he did Christmas Eve. I was staying with relatives because my mother wasn't there. And I was young, so the relatives, I was visiting with them while my mother was away. And of course, that night he left without announcing it to anyone. And that night, our house was burned to the ground. And they assumed, and we didn't know that he had left, of course. The people with whom I lived, who were relatives, until after the fact, he called. It was a full day before we knew that he wasn't in the home when it was burned. And they subsequently dragged the treasurer of the branch out of his home at night in his pajamas, killed him, and threw his remains in the river. And he was a very good friend of my father's. It's not anything that was unique in that day, but it wasn't either that commonplace. But there was enough of it for us to know that it happened in Mississippi or over there, you understand. I retired in 1997 and returned to the NAACP. I was home maybe for 6 weeks and to assist with some special fundraising operation called the Combined Federal Campaign, to which the NAACP had been admitted. It's a program where public employees, that is federal employees, are given the opportunity to contribute to the charity of their choice. And the NAACP was chosen as one of the charities that you had to apply for participation. But that was, and also to provide certain program support and to support the Special Contribution Fund.